The 4-step path to mastery. Hey everyone, Christopher Yaks here, founder of Yaks Yoga Concepts and Hot House Yoga. And today I want to talk to you about a framework that we use to understand the different levels of attaining skill and working towards that mastery level. Now, the idea of being a master at something may seem a little daunting, or it's like for someone else, but not for me. I think a lot of people have that same kind of idea, that perspective that, who am I to be a master at anything? But really, it's just time and effort. Time and effort to put into something that you love, and that's where we're going to start. The first part of the process, the first step, is passion. To find ignition, something that you love, that you're willing to devote time and energy towards. So, number one is passion. That passion really is when you're ignited. All right, so we'll call underneath it, ignition happens. I love that word ignition. We got it from Daniel Coyle. He wrote a book called The Talent Code, and this is a really wonderful book about what is skill, and how do you acquire it. And so passion is something that you would be doing even if you weren't getting paid to do it. It's that desire to be experiencing the service that you love, or the hobby that you love. If it's surfing, if it's martial arts, if it's yoga, if it's gardening, whatever it is, it's the thing that you would do fortunately, if you ever be paid for it, but even if money were not an issue, this is what we'd be doing. And why is that so important? Because these next steps, like I said, take time and take energy. They take effort. There was a study done about how many hours does it take to become a master in the most highly competitive fields. And what this meta-analysis showed was that it was about 10,000 hours. Now, I don't believe it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert, to become a master in your specific field per se, but the point of that is that it's going to take time regardless. Even if you chop that in half and it's 5,000 hours, that is time and energy, late hours, staying up at night. And so without this, we'll never sustain the amount of energy needed to get to that mastery level. So you're sparked, you're ignited, you feel passionate, you have this desire. What's the next level? You start devouring information, and that's when you're learning. So this is I'll just say it. Oh, don't fail me now, marker. There it is. In this learning phase, you are acquiring information in regard to what you're passionate about. So this learning phase, it's really insatiable. I remember in martial arts when I first started, I was bitten by that bug. I was so passionate, and I would be up looking at YouTube videos of different techniques and different Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu moves and different ways of learning Jeet Kune Do concepts. And that for us, martial arts was that first path, that first thing that we just fell in love with. And when we were in that learning phase, we were practicing every single day, sometimes 2 times a day. We were devouring all this information, what's the best practices for Taekwondo, what's the best practices for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and what's a way of putting it all together. And we luckily found Jeet Kune Do concepts, and it's one of my, I think, Jeet Kune Do concepts, which incorporates Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but we also practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu very separately with a great friend of ours, Gustavo Machado, but Jeet Kune Do concepts, and I got a full instructorship in that, which is equivalent to a black belt. And then the black belt I got in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is those two are the high watermarks in my martial arts career. I'm so proud of, but the amount of time and energy. So I started studying Jeet Kune Do concepts in 2020 and got my full instructorship about, I think it was 10 years later. And we had so fortunate to have a local teacher who was just the top-notch best person as a human being, and had a crazy skill set. His name is John Davis, and if you are watching, thank you for all your help and all your guidance over the years. So that full instructorship that I got from John Davis and that black belt that I got in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it felt so good because I put in the time and the effort. This is where we get to that next level. Now, the time and the effort was worth it because of the passion I had. I started getting paid for it, but even if I weren't, I'd be doing it. So the next level is, don't fail me now, learn, you practice. Oh, here we go. It'll revive. Oh, it's going to come back to life. There we go. You practice. And this is implementing the information. So you acquire it, and then you see how it works. What's so great about martial arts is that it was like, learn it today, use it tonight was the adage, so that we would learn something, and then I would get to test it on John, see if it worked or not. Now, it's tough because it didn't work a lot, but it didn't mean that it wasn't the right move, it's just I wasn't doing it enough. So what's so important about the practice phase is the willingness to stay in that grind. The grind of like, not being good. Oh, that's the worst, right? You learn it and you're like, oh, I want to be perfect at it. And then you realize you're not good at it, but you're willing to continue to stay in that, the incubator of learning and of practicing, of learning and practicing, being willing. So the hallmark here is you got to be willing to be bad to get good. You got to be willing to be bad to get good. And that's so important because if you're ever going to get to this mastery, so the fourth stage is mastery. At that master level, the way you get from just practicing to get to that mastery level is full commitment. It's commitment to highlighting your weakness. Commitment to highlighting your weaknesses. This practice to master, this is the biggest barrier right here. Why is it the biggest barrier? Because a couple of reasons. One, for me, what I saw in the martial arts world is that people got to a certain level and they capped out because they thought they knew. Their mind was like, oh, I know. It's so funny, you come into yoga and there was one day a woman came in very first time, and after class she came out and she was like, I'll be back. There was a couple that I didn't get right, but most of them I got, so I'm pretty good on those, but I'll come back again because there's like 3 or 4 poses that, and I'll just like, I need like 2 more classes, then I'll get them. I'm like, whoa, like think about if that's the framework, the mindset that you're going into like your life, like, wait, you got it? No, you didn't. There's a process. So this hurdle, right? How do you get from practicing into that mastery? It's what Daniel Cole called targeting your struggle. Like reach for something. Right? See where you wanted to go, and then evaluate that. What was missing? Because without that information, you don't know what to focus on, right? Because when, like intuitively, it's like we're just going to focus on what we're good at. I'm really good at this, so I'll just keep doing that. But to get to that next level, to jump over that practice and get into that mastery stage, the key element is to know what you're not good at, what you're missing. This is how we've taken teachers in our teacher training, students, and gotten them to be really, really good teachers. Like if you go to their class in their first class, you don't feel like they're a beginner teacher because the way in which we're training them is to focus on what you're not good at, to focus on the parts of the sequence that you don't really have it down, and to highlight that, because then if you shore that up, all of a sudden in short time you're going to be able to get to this feeling of mastery, which is again just a commitment to highlighting your weaknesses so that you become this well-rounded expert in that field of study. And then what ends up happening, I remember the day I got my full instructorship and the day I got my black belt, I was like, I don't feel like a master. But the difference is the person who's a black belt, the person who gets that full instructorship, the person who ends up being a teacher is the person who just didn't stop showing up. They came in, they were there day in and day out, day in and day out. John's going to go turn off his phone. So here's the takeaway. Whatever you're passionate about, see where you are in this level. Are you just learning and you have that insatiable appetite to just acquire information? You're like Googling everything, staying up late at night, and you're like, and this is kind of like, it's fluid. Like you're practicing, you're learning, you're practicing, you're learning, you're practicing, it didn't work out right, you got to go back to the drawing board and see, maybe that's it. But to commit to getting from here to here is a commitment to being a learner. That's like the core of it, to knowing that, hey, there's some things that I'm not good at, let me focus on them so that I can jump that hurdle and become that master, to feel like you're at that mastery level, which, again, is just time and energy. effort, day in and day out, the daily practices. And guess what? It's worth it when it's something you love, when it's something you're passionate about, when it's something that you would be doing if everything else, nothing else mattered. This is what you'd be doing. And so I hope this helps. And thank you for your time. Lots of love.